The federal government's emissions reduction target for 2035 was announced last week at 62 to 70% based on 2005 levels. Liberal Senator Maria Kovacic has previously warned her coalition colleagues to stop questioning the climate change science and embrace net zero emissions policies by 2050. She joins us now from Sydney. Maria, thanks very much for being with us on Afternoon Briefing.
Oh, lovely to be here. Thank you.
Maria, what do you think of the government's 60 to 72% target range for that 2035 target?
Well, I think the primary question that we need to ask is how do they intend to achieve that target? They haven't provided any detail on that to date. I think the biggest concern that we have is that it's pretty clear that they're not going to achieve their 2030 targets. And the 2035 target is predicated on the same modelling as the 2030 target. So what we need to do is actually have some clarity as to what is going on here. The concern that we have, and it's an important concern and one that Australians deserve an answer to, is why emissions are not reducing under this government. They have actually flatlined. Emissions were reducing under 3 previous coalition governments, but they have completely flatlined under the Albanese government. That is where our concerns are coming from. Absolutely, we need to do our part in reducing emissions. We need to ensure that we have a reliable, stable and affordable energy grid, but the government has not answered the question as to how they intend to reach these targets, and that's a problem.
So the government would point to its net zero plan that it released at the same time that it outlined this 62 to 70% target, where it goes through sector by sector the main initiatives that are already underway and then points to other areas where it expects to have further progress. You've said there's no plan. There clearly is a plan. Is it the lack of is it detail or the extent of detail that you're not satisfied with?
Well, there isn't sufficient detail, but the problem is that it relies on the government achieving their 2030 target, and they're not going to achieve that target.
So on that, the latest figures from the quarterly greenhouse gas emissions figures that we get an update from that 4 times a year. That's suggesting in the most recent ones that the government will get to 42 point something percent. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's just shy of the government's 43% target. So the government says it's on track, it's confident that it's still got 5 years to go in that space and it can make up the 0 point something difference to get to that, to meet that target. Why do you think that those figures that we've seen from the official quarterly accounts aren't right?
Well, the reality is that government's modelling hasn't been accurate to date. If we go back to just before the 2022 election, they provided modelling that suggested that electricity bills would be $275 lower for Australians. We now find that they're some $1,300 higher. We're right to question and to want to understand the clear detail behind these targets. The government hasn't delivered those. We've had some inflation data come out today. Inflation has gone up. We've had Treasury previously tell us in completely clear terms that this government is spending too much. We've now found out that part of the reason that inflation has now risen is because the government's energy rebates have come out of the system. So there is clearly a problem with energy bills and costs, and we need to have that clear information from government as to what this is actually going to cost Australians and how they are going to achieve these targets. It's not about saying that it's not important to reduce emissions. It's about holding the government to account to ensure that they will actually deliver what they're telling Australians that they will deliver.
The Coalition's energy and emissions reduction spokesperson Dan Tehan has been in the US studying nuclear power developments. Has he reported back to the Liberal Party room on that trip?
So we go back to Canberra for the next sitting period in 2 weeks, as does the government. The first week of that for me will be Senate estimates. We'll have those requisite conversations over time. I think it's important when you're looking at solving big problems, and energy is a big problem for Australians in the same way that housing, for example, is, and that crisis and the cost of living crisis, to explore all the options that are available and not to be ideological about it. I think I've spoken clearly before about being open to lifting the moratorium on nuclear and to allow our markets to decide whether that's feasible or not.
And just very briefly, can I ask your view, because there seem to be different views within the party around how quickly the Liberal Party should come to a conclusion about what its emissions reduction and energy policies should be. Do you think it should be sooner, or take your time and come to that conclusion a bit later?
We've only come out of an election some 4 months ago, and I think when you are delivered a message in the way that we were delivered a message on May the 3rd, you need to actually take your time to ensure that you properly understand what it is that people want from you and what they expect from you. And we are doing that. Our leader, Susan Lee, has been very clear that we are listening to understand so that we can appropriately act and deliver the outcomes that modern Australia wants from us in setting our policies. And that's exactly what we're doing.
All right. Well, we'll wait and see, and we'll be back in touch when everyone's back in Canberra for those parliamentary sittings coming up. Maria Kovacic, thanks very much for joining us on Afternoon Briefing.
Thank you.